mchana wa leo. Tuwakabidhi mnenaji ambaye atatuletea neno lako mikononi mwako Jehova, muongoze na maneno yote ambayo atazungumza yawe yanatoka kwa kinywa chako mwenyewe. Tupatie masikio ya kusikia na tupate kuyaishi hayo maneno yote, tupate kuendelea kukua ndani ya Yesu Kristo. Katika jina la Yesu tumeomba na kuamini. Karibu mwalimu.
God is good, and all the times. God is good, and all the times. That is his nature. Wow, God is great, beautiful. We are thanking God again that we are back again for Christian education. We talked about education yesterday, the general education yesterday, and we found that when we talk about education, we found that it's a process that involves imparting knowledge, skill, and judgment. You know, somebody who has gone to school should be somebody who can judge well, can have a very good judgment. And this one also involves a lot of attitude change, so that when somebody sees you, then should say that you have gone to school. There are people who have gone to school, but when they are now with the community, with people in the community where they interact, others say that school okokonyi, school okokonyongato, that you are going to school is not useful to you at all. That means there is something that that person is lacking. And that's what we are talking about, what we want to talk about, what's called Christian education. Now, we talked about types of education, which we mentioned to be 3, 1, 22. Let's just go very fast. 1, formal, next. Just say chorus the way you want to say chorus. Another one. Thank you very much. I know that chorus answers are no answers, but we have known that we have got 3 types of education: formal education, informal education, and non-formal. Now, briefly, when we talked about formal, we said that a learning that consists of school-based learning, subject-oriented, uniform curriculum, and highly structured teaching methods. That's the type of teaching which is now going on in our normal schools, kama kawaida. Then, in the non-formal education, we did talk about that is refers that learning through programs, but it's not usually evaluated and does not lead to any certification. And therefore, in non-formal, there's no certificate that somebody gets. But it's always not found in the school. It's always, although it's learned in various places, but in the process, when you are learning, there are some literacy that you learn from there, the basic skills and also job skills. And it's usually found in a community groups and other organizations. Then we also talked about, lastly, about the informal education, which we did talk about. We did talk about it. And that's where we have what is called charity begins at home. And if from this informal education, we start early, a child is given freedom, it's a child-driven education. He learns things as he interacts with people, as he moves about. And in the process, that's where he could learn wrong things and can learn good things. And therefore, you as a parent, it's your responsibility to make sure that you caution, you make sure you see how your child is moving, with whom is he interacting with. And they say that in this education, the learning takes place. One is viewing videos, which is very common today, self-study, reading articles, participating in forums, and chat rooms, performance support, coaching sessions, and games. These are the programs which has got no order. A child can just decide to go and watch a TV, can just decide to chat. In the process, he's getting knowledge. In the process of what he's doing, he's getting knowledge. And those knowledge could be detrimental to his life, can also make him good, can shape him for a good life, or can also not shape him for a good life. Today I want to talk about Christian education specifically. In Christian education trains students to understand the truth in the Bible and then share their faith confidently with others. That's Christian education. And this type of education is usually done in Christian schools. All Christian schools are private. All Christian schools are private. So in Christian school, the focus of education is to draw the student into a deeper and full understanding of God and the world he created. So when the child goes there, when he comes up, should now be able to know God and how God created the world. When he interacts with various things that he's seeing, then the picture of the presence of God is always in that child. Now, the goal, this one now brings me, when I talk about the school, Christian school, which is private, this one brings me the idea of a public school also comes in. So if you want to compare the two, the goal of a public school is to educate according to the world standard and belief. In a public school, people learn to conform with the standard which the world wants. The world wants papers, and that papers has to be got through thick and thin. And in the process, people have gone into outside the thinking because they want to get the certificates, they want to get very good papers. In the process, some have gone outside, and then the moral value is now not there in them. I'll come back to that again. So Christian schools integrate Christian morals and principles into each class. Each class that a child goes integrates morals and principles, Christian morals and principles into each class. That means that when the child is in a Christian school, this child is developing another skill which is not found in the public school. I know in the public schools we have the development, the pillars. We have the mental development, we have physical, but it lacks what is called spiritual development, which is now being fulfilled in a Christian school. Although they are now adding another pillar, which is called social, because the way people are interacting. So social is now coming as be part of a development of a child in education life. Now, the whole atmosphere of Christian school is one that both promotes and points students to the love of Christ. That is the direction. That all the things that they are being taught, they are taught towards that direction, that they should love, the love of Christ. I know the love of Christ, something about God and something about Christ is usually learned in the churches. But for most families and for roughly everybody, the church is only once a week. That means we know that we can only learn about God once a week, which is not enough. Learning about God has to continue so that that child grows. That means with the Christian education, children learn that God doesn't only exist on Sabbath or Saturday only, but is constantly at work in the world each and every day. That means that as the child only knows about God, God's work, mostly only once a week in the church, then there should be a continuation of that child knowing more about God. And that's why the Christian education is now molding that child, so that not to forget about God wherever he is or she is. The writer also says that a Christian school seeks to build what is taught at church and in home. It continues. The Christian school is only building. It's building what that child, the knowledge that child has got from the school, from the church, and from home. So the child is continuing with something which he has heard, which he has known from home. And that's why we have a problem today, because if the child can only know God, anything about God during the Sabbath, only once a week. But presently, these our children are not there in the church. Even those who are learning in the public schools, they are not there in the church on Sabbath. They are all continuing learning in the schools. And therefore, this child is there's something that that child has failed now to get. I hope you know, even if it's not taking place, but I know in Kisumu here, that tuition of Sabbath is constant. Even in Nyumbani Huko, all tuition of Sabbath, school of Sabbath is there. But who is supposed to be blamed? Is it the school? Is it the ministry? But the government has already given people the freedom of what? Of worship. So the goal of any school is to educate children about life, the world, and their purpose in it. That's the goal of any school, whether public or Christian school. So, whenever you're talking about Christian education, this one seeks to teach children about the world God created, how our faith is woven into each one of learning, each areas of learning, and how to find purpose and meaning through God's will for our life. So it means that when we're talking about Christian education, then there is something that we expect to get from the children when they come back. So this one brings me to come back again with the public and Christian school. I've said all Christian schools are all private schools. Whether SDA, whether Catholic, whether whichever church, they are all private school. There's a lot of saying that say that, the Advent schools are very expensive. They are very expensive if you are comparing it with another private school. Now, in the process, in the public schools, in the olden days, children were going to schools that belongs to that denomination. If you are a Catholic, you only go to a Catholic school. If you're a Protestant, and so on and so on. And therefore, people are very strict. And therefore, there is an easy transition of God's word with the child as he goes there. Then every one day of the week, is always given to what is called a pastoral care. And that pastoral care is the responsibility of the church. That's where the child is learning. The school, which is that church, or sponsor, use that language, a better language which you can understand. They now continue, they come on that particular day to come and continue teaching those children the doctrines of that church. So that child, the fact that he's going to school does not mean that he could now deviate from the doctrine of that church. And that was what's called pastoral care. Now, when the government comes up with another education policies, then all the schools which were run by churches became the public. When they became public, the government now paid teachers to go and teach there. But given that those schools were previously owned by various churches, so the government also left that at least all their schools, those schools are now sponsored by those denominations. And that's why we also have the schools which are sponsored by the Seventh-day Adventists. And those are public schools, but not Christian schools. The reason why the Christian schools are expensive the way you see them is because they pay their own teachers. Whoever is in that institution is paid by the church that owns that school. So that one makes it becomes expensive. And that one makes the SDA schools become expensive the way you think of it. I'm just ending to give you so that I know people have got some various questions to ask. But before you ask the question, I know that when we're talking, I've explained well of what is called Christian education. So Christian education is done in Christian schools. And all Christian schools are built by various churches, and they are private. That means you can't compare them with the public school. We talked about a public school to be, a goal of public school is to educate according to the world's standard and belief. In the process of all these things taking place in these public schools, there's an outcry all over. The moral value, the moral in the schools, the public schools are now going off because of the type of education that they want. Because they want papers, and therefore they can use whatever means to get those papers well. There are so many schools which are now going on strike to the various principals because those principals cannot cheat exams for them. And that's very common now. If you are a principal of a school and you are heading at the school, you have a problem today. Because those who are in the school there, those children who are there, all of them want to pass. Even those people who cannot qualify, all of them want to pass. And this one has given us, in the country, a population which cannot do well in public life, even in the various places where they have gone. The worst places are those people in the hospitals. A good number of them, Even if they want, if you go there to be treated, you explain, unless he Googles in a phone. You talk and then he Googles in the phone because of the experience. Is getting the knowledge from the phone to how to teach you, how to treat you, and so on. So the question is, why? Which I now pose to you. Why we have the sponsored schools? The sponsored schools are I'm now specific about the SDA. We have the sponsored schools of the SDS. And if you look in Central Nyasa Conference, I'm talking about the sponsored. If we look at the conference, Central Nyasa Conference, how many schools are there which are called Christian school? Do we have some in Central Nyasa Conference? Do we have any which you might think to take your child to? You don't know any? Ungia kagima unok jok maok ni kanisa ne. Uni kanisa makikai ni Kisumu ka kuna school majo SDA uti muru marat manade. What nana which school? You have a big C here. That one is an SDA school, which is managed by the church. Is there any other? Another one? Hakuna ingine. People in Kisumu only know things in Kisumu. There was Kisumu South, but Kisumu South is now not there. So you are now cut off. Because you don't know anything. But that one does not mean India SDA Marcelo Nyasa Conference. Any other school which is a church school or a Christian school as SDS, but not sponsored. Hakuna ingine. We only have Migosi. I'm talking about Central Nyasa Conference. I know Nyabola, yes, that one is out. Now, we are now concentrate here. Which one? Akona. Even Chemele here, you are not seeing. Also, because Chemele is not going to. Is it going on? Ununju public. Let me come back to the public. That's where you are. The public's people whom their children goes to public. The government has done something to the schools which are sponsored by various churches, even the SDA. I'm now very specific on SDA. That in a board of the school, the church is given a lion's share. The church is given 3 people in the board. And the church is given a privilege of getting a chairman of the board. And that is the sponsored. So the question is, why are we now having this a cut of Christian education is now lacking in our children? Our children of Seventh-day Adventists. Because they're always not there in Sabbath. Whose mistake is that? Duokauru, I'm now giving you, I've given a forum, I've finished. Give them this mic so that they talk. I want to hear them talk. Hakuna mutu, yes, there is a hand.
Elder, freedom of worship is enshrined in the Constitution of Kenya 2010, and that teachers are aware of that, and that day schools should just run from Monday to Friday, and that Saturday is remedial, so it should be optional. Unfortunately, it is our own Seventh-day Adventist teachers who lobby for that remedial and even participate in persecuting our own Seventh-day Adventist children. I'm speaking from experience because we have students in schools such as Kisumu Girls, Kisumu Boys, Kisumu Day, and many other primary schools including in area. In fact, some of these Adventist teachers not only extend to that, but even make it very hard for our students even to have pastors go there. So what I'm requesting, or I'm suggesting, Pastor, that we are our own enemies. Thank you.
So he's saying he's crucifying the walimu wa Adwen, the Seventh-day Adventist teachers. Leo.
Thank you so much for allowing me to speak. Many a times when this lesson starts, you are always complaining so much about us parents leaving our children to go to this public school, and you are really encouraging us to take our children to our schools, which is very right. I don't complain about that. Why are you always forgetting even the teachers? Why do you always on children and you are not on our Seventh-day Adventist teachers? Also encourage them to go to our Christian schools. I've never heard of that.
Yeah. Why are we not encouraging our teachers not to go to the Adventist schools? I was just asking you, sir, a few minutes ago, that which other schools are there in Central Nyanza Conference, but you only mentioned Wapi. Migos, which is a primary school. But we have categories of people from secondary and primary. So, Chemeli is also a primary school. That means that's your question, therefore it means that our teachers of secondary schools will lack where to go because we don't have any secondary school in Central Nyanza Conference. We had Kisumu South, but I don't know what happened. Yes, I'm seeing other hands. I like the way you are now coming up.
I think Pastor, let us be sincere.
Yes.
Elder, that we speak the truth. These people, as they sit here, each and every one of them would like their children to succeed. When they go to school, they are taught, they pass, and then they go to higher places. The problem we might be having with our institutions is bad management. And this bad management has reached a point whereby they can't do well. So we were just asking a question some few seconds ago. What happened to Kisumu South Secondary School? What really happened? I grew up at Ranen, or in Ranen area, whereby a Ranen conference was my church. And Ranen Secondary School, for a very, very long time, it could not come out of its needs. Until today, we have the president of Ranen Conference, which has totally changed the faces of Ranen Secondary. Even now, we have Ranen Primary School, they call it Ranen Primary School, which is run by the church. When I was in secondary, I was somewhere called Gandia Secondary School. All Gandia students would be taken to Gandia Hostel. What really happened is the same Gandia Hostel which was there then, which we are having now. Now it is us to ask ourselves question and internalize that why is it that we cannot manage these institutions to the extent whereby they can produce results? Why do we have Catholic-based schools doing very well than SDA schools, yet we are vast in knowledge more than them? So it's a question we have to ask ourselves, and I hope that is why we are only having Migosi here, because of poor mismanagement. I hope I will not be removed from the book of the church.
You talk about, I heard you talk about poor performance in our schools. How is Migosi performing? Huh? Is it this small or is performing well? Performing well, sawa.
Thank you,
Yes.
thank you, Elder. I've heard you talking about the students and even asking why our children are not in the church. But I wanted us to go a notch higher and talk about even the colleges, the universities. So our problem first is to make sure that we have our institutions, but at the same time, think about the cost. Because even if you let your children to go to all Adventist schools, it reaches a time that they have to go to colleges. And probably, I trust that not every Christian would be able to foot the bills in our colleges that we know. I'm talking from the basis of having taken some of my children to private colleges. It is not very easy. And so if you want to grow as Seventh-day Adventists, we should not stuck at primary and secondary, but we should go a notch higher and make sure that we have as many colleges as possible so that our faithful saints can get where to proceed after secondary. And that would really do us good. I'm not saying that we do not have universities and colleges, but the truth be told, they are a bit expensive.
I said that when you talk about expensiveness of a school, then at least we'd be comparing it with another church school elsewhere. If you compare Baraton and this one of Catholic, how are they? Baraton is higher, huh? And this one is a bit cheaper of the Catholic. It's all right. So the purpose of that one of our schools being expensive, I just don't know, because even today, we are complaining all over. We are complaining about the books of SDAs, very expensive. And we are the SDAs whom the books are brought to. And even if you go, there's something here. Even if you go to the book center here, the population, the books which are being bought there, the people who are buying the books of the SDAs are non-SDAs. You go to a lesson, a good number of people don't have a lesson, but people have, I went there one time and found a carton, full big carton, going to Bondo, to a church which is not a SDA. So, no, if you love you love your church, if you love your church, you should be able to love whatever is coming out from it. And therefore, you should be able to sacrifice for your church. But why do you always complain about your things? That's the problem of our SDA people. But then, I agree with you that they could be expensive. But are people not going there? Are people not going there? And the people who are going there, the SDAs have withdrawn. Then who are going there instead?
Just a comparison,
Yes.
Elder.
Yes.
I have a student at St. Paul's,
Yes. Catholic.
Limuru.
Yeah, Limuru, yes.
And I also have a student who is undertaking his course at Kabarak,
Yes.
at Baraton.
Yes.
Truth be told, you know, even if you would tell us to own our institutions, there is a bit that is not practicable. Because there is one thing that the previous government did, that all the private universities would even allow the job students to be admitted in these colleges, so that there is that disbursement from the national government giving some funds to the universities. But the truth is that at St. Paul's, once you pay the fee that is prescribed, you would not get any newsletter again following you. But in our marathon, you'd find that there are some additional costs. As a parent, because we cannot come to church and lie here. As a parent, who also have several to assist or your child to go to school, what is the comment at the sitting room? You have to talk definitely, because you'll say that that is a church-sponsored school, and this is also a church-sponsored school. But you find that ours is a bit costly. That is one. Number two, the requirements. I'm sorry to say this. Even the requirements are a bit very expensive. And so we are the church. And wherever there is a problem at Baraton, our leaders will always come at the pulpit and tell us to support, and we support. And so we have just to make noise and tell them that yes, we are willing to take our kids to these learning institutions, but they're a bit expensive for us. And that is the truth of the matter, because why should we lie? And that is the truth.
Sawa. I think it's bringing a point. And he's talking out of experience because he's taking his children there. But the question which I posed earlier is that however expensive it is, these our institutions are very expensive. That's the college we are comparing the Baraton. But these institutions are still going on. But the question is that are there students in those schools? And if the students are there in that school, they soldiered on despite of the expensiveness of those institutions. And those who had gone to those institutions, they could also have a say, because could I guess anybody who learned at Baraton here? Hakuna mutu. There's nobody who learned at Baraton. Kamagambo? Yes, I'm seeing somebody there who learned at Kamagambo. Is it so much expensive, or there was some? Is there any some leeways that you could also give him something to say?
Yes, I learned at Kamagam.
Yes.
It was expensive. See, that is what you asked.
It was expensive, and eventually you finished.
Yeah, I finished
Yeah.
by the fee there. Some of us were doing something called work program.
Yes.
You had to supplement, or you had to do some work that the subordinate were doing to capitate some of your fee. So we were working, and part of the money that was supposed to be paid was wired in our school fee, so that we can cope up with the expensiveness.
Sawa.
Elder has a question here.
Somebody has a question.
I have a question. Now, why can't we ask? We've had our pastors, and there are quite a number of colleges. Why is it that majority of our pastors or students who want to do theology move from Kenya to Uganda and even Tanzania? yet we have the same institutions around with us. Elder, you allow me for bothering you. And
I've agreed.
I just want to bring this point home, that we are really willing to get into these institutions. Because when you ask that, are there students in these institutions? There are. But you see, that one is depending on one's pocket and probably the number of students that one has in a household. So if we can only answer this question, why most of our students prefer going to a neighboring country instead of going to these our local universities around, then we would know why most of our students are not preferring our colleges like Baraton. But I want to repeat, we want to make this noise as loud as possible so that we are heard and a solution is found within the church setup.
I like the way we are making noise, because that noise will make somebody become to sense that there is something wrong with our higher institutions, which is barring us from taking our children there. Yeah, I don't have a good answer to give you. But I know Pastor is saying something. But in the process, after he has said, don't just concentrate on the higher institution. Can't you talk about here? We were talking about Christian education, where there is a cut, where the child does not know anything about God. The spiritual development is now lacking in your children down here. Can't we say something about it? What solution do we have? Pastor Karibu.
Yeah, thank you, Elder. I want to believe that basically education is expensive, despite which college or school you attend. It is expensive. So government institutions, citizens have an advantage that the government puts almost enough subsidy for students. So its expensiveness is shared. So the government pumps a lot of money for each student, and then even though students may pay, so they don't feel the heavy weight, as opposed to non-governmental institutions, which you have to bear the whole cost. So that one also explains why private institutions are expensive. Again, if you compare Advent institutions and other institutions, then we say ours are a bit expensive. Okay, to what margin? Okay, example here at Migosi Primary. If you compare the cost of Migosi Primary with the MA Junior, Aga Khan, and which other private school? Ekima, Makini. So which one is expensive more than all these schools? Which one charges higher than all these schools? Ekima and Makini. Okay. Depending. Okay. So before we point fingers first, let us do comparison. Let us do research and find at Ekima, at Migosi, what's the general fee structure. Even if you want to admit your child, then you'll not find a little higher, but there's not so much big variation. But you'll find Migosi almost fits with this. If you go to Baraton, the school is full.